Hello and welcome to another episode of Stand Up. I am your host, Pete Dominick. Each day, I've got your headlines, I've got the best clips from yesterday, and every day I do a live interview with a very smart person that we can all learn a lot from. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for being you, is one thing I like to say. We've created an amazing community around the show that I've been doing since all the way back in 2008. At Sirius XM, started as a podcast in 2020, and we would love to have you be a part of that community. Every Thursday night, I host a Zoom where over 50 people often are there and often stay there for like 2-3 hours. It's so much fun. If you've never joined us, you should join us. If it's been a while, come on back. And all you need is a paid subscription on Patreon, and you'll get the link, or on Substack. So you can get a paid subscription at either place. Support the work, support the show, be a member of the community, make new friends. Our friend Maddie Carlson just went out on tour and is with another listener right now in Kentucky, Matt Elliott, doing a home concert. So catch him and subscribe to his work over at What Am I Making? It's a Substack, as well as our friend Barry and Abigail Hummel and their podcast, Pops on Hops. We've got so many really creative people. Of course, John Carroll's a Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter and icon, really, and we're so lucky to have him writing the music for the show and also just being a very active member of our community. Hi to John and his wife, Meredith, up in Massachusetts. He's having an album release party, by the way, up there. August 11th, I think it is, right? Go to johncarroll.org, support him, and let's do the news. It's time for what we call the shit show.
It's Pete's headlines and clip show. Get in on the shit show.
Let's start with this news that last night, Iran apparently tried some kind of surprise attack, if you believe the U.S. Central Command. And they said last night that multiple ballistic missiles from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were launched at numerous targets. And they attempted a surprise attack, but they were intercepted, is what Central Command said. All Iranian missiles were successfully intercepted. U.S. forces remain vigilant at a high state of readiness. So really, no pause at all, it would seem. Maybe there was a couple of days, but Iran also put out another amazing Lego propaganda video, which you can't help but cheer on and be impressed by, which is a very uncomfortable feeling to be rooting against the American president in such a way when Iran is the one creating the propaganda. But I'll share that video in the clip show and tell me I'm wrong. Also yesterday, the Senate confirmed Jay Clayton to be the top intel guy leading the commander-in-chief in a party line vote. And so there you go. The new director of intelligence, better than the last one, Bill Pulte, but both of them are sycophants. And the appointment led Democrats to walk away from a bipartisan deal to reauthorize a warrantless spy tool known as 702. But this guy now being in place, I guess they're going to be able to get that passed and across the finish line. All right, well, what's the latest with Mitch McConnell? This screwy deal. There's new pictures of him, apparently. I don't know. But yesterday, the governor of Kentucky, a Democrat, Andy Beshear, he called on McConnell to publicly demonstrate that he remains capable of serving or resign. A day after McConnell's office said the 84-year-old Republican senator was still not medically cleared to leave rehab. Quote, as governor of a state you serve, I'm calling on you directly, verbally, to address the people of Kentucky and provide proof of your capacity to serve or resign. He also gave an interview to my friend Joe Matthew, my old friend Joe Matthew, my old boss at Sirius XM. I'll try to find that clip and play it for you from Bloomberg. He said McConnell could do so by releasing a short video or calling a Kentucky radio station. He gave him a bunch of different options, apparently. He also asked Senate Majority Leader John Thune to investigate McConnell's condition if the senator does not show that he can continue serving McConnell's office. Well, they declined to comment, so we're still waiting, I think. The Wall Street Journal has another palace intrigue story where apparently our gross, disgusting commander-in-chief was trying to embarrass or minimize his gross, disgusting Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr. Wall Street Journal got this piece, scoop, quote, an irate Donald Trump told Robert F. Kennedy Jr. he would be considered a failure if he could not prove a long-debunked link between vaccines and autism. During an Oval Office meeting in June, the president chastised the Health and Human Services Secretary for not doing enough to prove an alleged connection between childhood vaccines and autism, and he felt he should accomplish more in the past year. and a half, leading Department of Health and Human Services. So, by the way, I've always had this theory, and I don't know if there's any reporting on this, but that Donald Trump believes this because his son Barron is on the spectrum, and he has to have the perfect Trump blood, so how could he be this way? Well, it must be some kind of link between vaccines, right? Because it couldn't have been in his genes. I think he truly believes that. Doesn't seem like a far stretch, right? He also, Trump, pointedly asked Kennedy why he wasn't doing more to investigate the alleged connection between vaccines and autism during the lunch at the president's golf course in May. So it's a couple times he's done this. He accused the health secretary of getting the yips for not investigating the issue more aggressively. The yips. Also, Lindsey Graham's funeral was yesterday, and what can we say about that? There's some really weird, awkward moments from Trump. Not only did he fall asleep while he was sitting there, but his speech was just awful and gross. And when he walked off stage, he kind of like tapped the coffin in an awkward way because everything he does is just abnormal and awkward and weird, if not cringe and horribly embarrassing and humiliating, just because he is where he is. All right, what else do I have for you? Oh, new reporting from, who is this from? The World Health Organization, that 4 out of 5 foods that are sold to toddlers in the United States are ultra-processed. According to research, they analyzed more than 2,700 products on grocery store shelves. Nearly half of those items also failed to meet at least one nutritional benchmark for children set by the World Health Organization. Wow. The answer is, well, I mean, this is crazy. This is many of them high in sugar, high in sodium. Parents can't really tell that from just walking down the aisle and obviously the way that they're marketed towards kids. But 4 out of 5 toddler foods are ultra-processed. Nearly half fail to meet nutrition standards. I think that's a pretty big story coming from the World Health Organization about the United States. This is about us. Yikes. Well, a 7.1 magnitude rocked Japan's the southern part of the country yesterday, killing at least 2 people after an explosion tore through a shopping mall and another in a building collapse, knocked out power to thousands of homes, rupturing roads across the region. The Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, said authorities were still assessing the full extent of the damage in the area, which was devastated by a deadly quake just a decade ago. So hospitals reporting dozens of injuries. Multiple people are missing after a chimney collapsed in a factory. Thousands of homes without power. Major earthquake. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos coming out of Japan, but it's pretty wild, pretty scary looking. And as the Iran war enters the 6th month in a period of greater uncertainty, Iran is in no rush to return to talks with the United States. Those are the headlines at the New York Times. Amid a reprieve in the fighting, Iran's leaders are betting that they can endure more pain than President Trump can, and they have the leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. That is a little bit from that article, and I don't know how you can argue with that analysis, which has a lot of experts quoted in it. And this, the Kremlin has initiated a new crackdown on anti-war voices in their own country ahead of Russia's parliamentary elections in September, barring candidates from running if they show any sign of opposing the bloody, expensive, and increasingly unpopular military operation in Ukraine. And now this, the New York Times reporting that the Trump administration has begun arresting foreign citizens with expired visas, including spouses of Americans, at U.S. airports. The arrests at check-in counters and arrival gates have taken place in at least 15 airports in recent weeks. Footage of the encounters has flooded social media. The effort appears to be an expansion of an arrangement between TSA and ICE, which began by targeting people with deportation orders. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants and visitors overstay visas each year, including many in a legal gray area who have active applications to stay in the country and have been issued work permits. And so this is a pretty big story. The New York Times and others now reporting on it. New York Times also has a report on the rough season of foodborne illnesses. They say that a salmonella outbreak led to the recall of 19 million eggs. An E. coli infection was traced to some organic blueberries. And as of its latest update, the CDC has confirmed we're investigating a record 11,500 cases of that cyclopsoriasis diarrhea parasite transmitted through food, water contaminated with human shit. Oh, God. Top health regulators insist this week that consumers could still trust what they're eating. U.S. food supply is safe, said a top FDA official at a food safety conference. But I don't think people feel that way. How do you feel? And finally, today, a guy was hiking in Montana alone, He's on the highest mountain there, and he slipped and he impaled himself on his trekking pole, on his hiking pole, which I've heard those things are more dangerous to use than not to use, and that you shouldn't use them from my hardcore hiking friends. But he fell and impaled himself. It went like through just under his armpit, outside his ribs. It looks like it through his ribs. I don't know. But he's a wound nurse, this guy. So he dressed his wound and trekked 10 miles back to get it removed. David Cifaldi is his name, and he was hiking up Granite Peak. So he went into survival mode, saved his own life, and you got to give him credit for that. He's a handsome devil, too. All right. Well, I thought I would end on a good story, ending the news segment there. All right, I got some good clips for you today. Let's start with some things regarding the Middle East and Israel and Iran. First, someone reshared this clip. A listener actually sent this to me, but this is an old clip from Jimmy Carter on Democracy Now! Actually didn't vet this. He really did say this, right? This is a real clip, but I thought it was really interesting. Jimmy Carter was a pretty strong critic of Israel, called it an apartheid state early on. But take a listen or watch this, because now everything's on video, so you can watch it along with me.
AIPAC is not dedicated to peace. They're dedicated to inducing the maximum support in America, in the White House, in the Congress, and in the public media for whatever policies the Israeli government has at a particular time, and they're extremely effective.
There you go. Former President Jimmy Carter criticizing AIPAC. I'm not sure exactly when that was. I think it was sometime in the 90s, maybe late aughts, actually. But Jimmy Carter was a harsh critic. So, yeah, what do you think? All right, here is Rahm Emanuel, who was, I think, an unlikely critic of Israel, but he's there talking about Netanyahu, who's in America yesterday. Here he is on CNN with Christian Amanpour.
I want to know what you think, because there's been a lot of back and forth about who was really responsible, who is the father of the war on Iran. President Trump says, it was me, I'm the leader of the free world, it's not Netanyahu. Others believe that it's Netanyahu who had convinced him with what turns out to be faulty intelligence, that it would be an easy, once in a lifetime, once in a generation slam dunk. What do you think? And what do you think? We haven't had all the details yet from the meeting with President Trump, but what do you think President Trump is and should be saying to Netanyahu now?
Yeah. Well, one is, look, I never give a president of the United States a pass. I know one thing, having been served 2 presidents in the Oval Office, spent 8 years in and out of it. The only decisions you get in the Oval Office, like a mayor of a big city, are bad and worse, and you have to have the judgment to distinguish bad and worse. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been talking to 4 different presidents who rejected this idea. President Bush, 43, President Obama, President Trump 1.0, and President Biden all said no to this. So President Trump doesn't get a pass. Did Netanyahu finally get him to say yes? He did say yes, and that's on the president. The president of the United States is required to, as a commander-in-chief, to secure America's national security interests and also the men and women who serve that interest and look out for them. So I don't give a pass to the president of the United States. Now, I also believe if you put this war up against President Obama's JCPOA for all the goods and bads, here's how you juxtapose it. China and Russia were enforcing with the United States Iran's ending of its nuclear or limiting of its nuclear capacity. Today, they're funding Iran and supplying Iran in its war against the United States, killing Americans. 2, the JCPOA had the uranium out of Iran. Today, the uranium is in Iran. 3rd, the uranium was down to 3% purity. Today, it's at 90% purity. 4th, the Strait of Hormuz was open. Today, it is closed. And 5th, the world was part of isolating Iran and making realize the cost of that nuclear project versus then. Nothing in politics is perfect. Go to another profession if you want perfect. In the balance of equities, the JCPOA was the right decision versus this decision. The president of the United States has now got the United States in a war with Iran that has not only he doesn't have leverage, you now having replaced the proxies, Iran's using the Strait of Hormuz as its leverage on the world. and trying to achieve its ultimate goal, push America out of the region, which is why it's bringing the cost to the Gulf countries from Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq to be too burdensome, and Qatar too burdensome to have the United States. So to me, this was on the president. He has the agency as the commander-in-chief of the United States of America and the responsibility. Prime Minister Netanyahu sold that to 4 presidents, and all of them said, not buying. This is the president that bought it, and it was a mistake then, and it's a mistake now.
Rahm Emanuel. Wow. I agree with every word of what he had to say there, which is not something I'm always saying about Rahm Emanuel, but man, powerful statement and argument. And a lot of people just don't know the history there. And his point about you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, of course. Good stuff. All right, what's next? What else do I have for you? Oh my God, this Lego video is amazing. And I can't believe that I'm rooting for the Iranians against U.S. president is a pretty common consensus of people who watch this. But what they're doing here is remarkably effective. And I don't understand how they've gotten so good at it. Here it is.
Your empire is done. You started the war, you thought you would win. Now look at the mess that your country is in. Look at it. Your general's crying, your plan was a bust. The promises made are now turning to dust. Marco Rubio was sweating, he's grilled on the floor. They asked for the billions you wasted on war. You lied from day one, you keep capping a lot. But look at the street, yeah, we got it on lock. Locked down. You're begging for mercy, you're begging for peace, while telling your media Iran wants to cease. You sure? You're losing the straight, you're losing the state. And now the whole public is drowning in hate. You told, stop talking about Epstein. Now listen to the crowd.
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
Louder!
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
Don't stop talking about
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
louder!
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
You lied about Iran, said Navy is gone. You promised regime change from darkness to dawn. You're dreaming, your beautiful B-2s were flying so high, still shaking inside. You're about to cry. You stood on the stage, looking completely detached, saying, I don't care about voters as cash. Did he really say that? Yeah, he did. You care about ballrooms, luxury suites, while American families starve on the streets. Inflation is peaking, the economy's dead, but you worry about Israel instead. The corruption is deep, AIPAC's buying the state. Every politician's got a price on their plate. You're all just puppets dancing for funds, while Iran is standing and holding the guns. You're losing the straight, you're losing the state. And now the whole public is drowning in hate. You told, stop talking about Epstein. Now listen to the crowd.
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
Louder!
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
Don't stop talking about
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
louder!
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
You called yourself a king, but you're just a BJ queen. The biggest disaster the White House has seen. Your empire is done, 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 done.
Epstein, Epstein, Epstein.
The war is lost.
Epstein.
You go fix your ballroom.
The fire is done. Settle down.
Okay. So we don't want to give them any more support than I just did, but I thought that was pretty powerful. Here is David Hogg destroying DNC chair Ken Martin on our friend Laura Coates show. Wanted to play that for you.
Martin resign as chair of the DNC?
Yes, fully. I mean,
How do you feel really?
I mean, I couldn't say it more simply than that. Like, let's just walk through the past 18 months, all right? So it starts out with him getting elected, running on the idea that he's going to release an autopsy as one of his marquee things that he's going to do to hold the party accountable and actually say, what are we going to do differently after this election? Then in the midst of that, obviously, I start talking about our primary challenges. We have our back and forth. And he continues to say that the biggest problem that he's having with his leadership is me, and I'm undermining him as at the time, 25-year-old, right? If that's your biggest problem as the chair of the opposition party to Donald Trump, your priorities are not straight. Then the autopsy comes out. It doesn't talk about any of the actual issues that decided the election. It doesn't talk about Gaza. It doesn't talk about inflation. It doesn't talk about the president's age. And it doesn't even include a conclusion. Then you add on top of that they are $2 million in debt 18 months into this. Your job as the chair of the DNC is to raise money. And if you can't raise money, let alone not throw your phone at staffers and not raise money, I don't know what you're doing there because it's not your job.
Well, there you go. David Hogg not pulling his punches at all there. Here's a little bit more. Now he is on MS Now as well.
And see the progressive movement, we aren't $2 million in debt. We are winning, and we're building a real shakeup to the establishment that voters are craving, where they want fighters who are not just offering them lip service and different lipstick to put on the same pig and tell voters that we've, changed when we really haven't. And they feel like we aren't actually fighting back in any way other than writing strongly worded letters. Voters want people who actually deliver, and they want a vision for the Democratic Party that they can believe in, that isn't just saying to voters, hey, we're not Republicans. Voters want an affirmative vision for the future of this country. And that's part of why Ken Martin is having these fundraising woes. There is no vision for the future of the party. That's what voters are really craving. They know Donald Trump is terrible. The reason why Democrats, in particular at the DNC, are not raising money isn't because people love Republicans. It's because they can't do the most basic parts of their job.
I don't know what to think about it. I don't know what's going on there. But what I am getting is that kid really is ambitious and does want the job. And that makes me feel a little uncomfortable, but I don't know. Don't listen to me on any of this. There are a lot of smart people that pay attention to, have experience and connections to the inner workings of the DNC and understand its role and functionality. I'm not that guy, but I'll talk to some people who do try to understand what this mess is, get their views on David Hogg and anybody else who's running, because it's not just him. Speaking of Democrats, let's talk about Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. A lot of people have been clamoring for him, demanding that he replace Mitch McConnell in the Senate with a Democrat. And other people are saying he can't do it. Well, I don't know what to think, but here is a couple of clips on it. First, Andy Beshear sat down with my old friend Joe Matthew over on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. And here's what that looked and sounded like.
Really pushing this.
Do I understand it correctly that August 3rd is a key deadline here, that if Mitch McConnell continues in this capacity through the 3rd, then you will not have an opportunity to name a replacement until an actual election is held?
There's an argument out there that that's a date where I could not later call a special election. And for those that are really pushing this.
Will you challenge that?
Well, a lot of those that are pushing this are online, and I think are under the impression that a Democrat in Kentucky might be able to win that election. It's been since 1992 that we have had a Democratic senator in Kentucky. You mentioned a lot of missed votes. I want to point out some other missed votes that might not be a bad thing. He hasn't been there to vote on the SAVE Act, which would tear voting rights away. He hasn't been there to vote to support this war in Iran that this president started and shouldn't be continuing. He's not there to vote for a potential replacement of a Supreme Court justice to continue a court that would tear down the Voting Rights Act. So listen, when you look at some of this, a vacancy, not having Mitch McConnell show up isn't necessarily a bad thing, because he certainly doesn't show up to help the American people.
All right, well, there you go. How about this? I love me some Jonathan Cohn, and this is an undercovered story I want to share with you about the Trump administration's attempts to cut Head Start, which is a vitally important story. This is Jonathan Cohn over on The Bulwark.
That spirit. I mean, that's what I think, what is the idea of Head Start? The fundamental premise of Head Start is that every child in America deserves a shot to be a part of America. And that's true even if they're really poor, even if their skin isn't white, even if they're from some other country. It is the idea of American pluralism. It embodies that spirit. I mean, that's what the war on poverty and civil rights were about too, right? I mean, it's this inclusiveness that everybody belongs. And I just think at some fundamental level, that is antithetical to the MAGA project. It is the opposite of what Stephen Miller believes. It is the opposite of what Donald Trump believes. So of course they're going to go after this program, even if it's a small program, even if it's not a lot of money, because it stands for everything they reject about America. I think, what is the idea of Head Start? The fundamental premise of Head Start is that every child in America deserves a shot.
Love that. So important. Glad that they're talking about it, and always follow and support Jonathan Cohn. All right. And let's see. What else do I have for you? That's it. That's all the clips I brought today? Really? Okay. Well, out of time anyway, but I'm very excited to get to today's guest. course, we love Jared Yates Sexton. Had a great conversation with him about the role that influencers and content creators are playing, as well as the divide in the Democratic Party that he calls a civil war, and more. I always love talking with Jared. You should listen and support his podcast, the Muckrake Podcast. Support him on Patreon. Subscribe to his Substack. Get his books. And follow him over on Blue Sky, where he's very popular. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you haven't got a paid subscription, patreon.com/Pete Dominick right now. Let's do it. Here's my conversation with Jared Yates Sexton that we did and is available on Substack and should be up on YouTube. Well, this is YouTube, right? I'm on YouTube. I think I am. Here we go. Hour live. I didn't say he was a good guy. I just said he's doing well in his lane. Jared Yates Sexton. Hello.
You don't have to defend your feelings about Donald Trump, Pete. It's okay.
Well done. Well done. All right. We just started. Maybe we have an internet issue. I hope we don't have an internet issue. But if we do, could you just chime in the chat? Because I don't want any problems. And I think it's on my end, not on Jared's end. And he's just easier to look at. In the chat, say who's better looking also. Just say
Don't do that.
Rank us so that we can talk about it.
Don't do that too.
Don't do that to myself. You know the outcome. We both look amazing in hats also. Okay, Jared Yates Sexton, I'm shooting the ship as people come in. Thank you very much for joining me here on the Substack Live. And most of these people, I guess, will probably be big followers and fans of yours. So I am very happy to be in conversation with you anytime. Jared and I are good friends, known each other for a long time, and I love his work, his books, his articles, and his thoughts on things. And I also know him really well, and his moral clarity is what I care about most. We line up so often when it comes to that, including recently on this issue, and I'm wondering if people will be interested in us talking about it, that there's a lot of people doing what you and I think are unethical things with money. A lot of influencers, progressive influencers, content creators, commentators, journalists, whatever you want to call them, from Chuck Todd to Cliff Schechter to other people who I'm actually friends with but won't name, but have talked to privately about some of the things they're doing that I don't like. How are you talking about this? You posted about it, writing about it, and how do we get people interested? Because it matters a lot if you know where people are getting their money and why.
Yeah, and I think there's an importance to this because I think I grew up in the time of the internet, Pete, back when I first got on, where it was like you were on all these message boards and you got into like big feuds with each other, and you had what used to be called flame wars. And by the way, you're from radio. Every disc jockey that has ever existed gets in a feud with another disc jockey.
Oh yeah,
Right.
we were not allowed to do that at SiriusXM. There was a rule against it, but it did not stop the guys at Opie and Anthony or Jim Brewer on me. They shut on me all the time.
Exactly. And by the way, like if a person is judged by their enemies, congratulations, Pete. And I will just say that on this note, this isn't about professional antagonism. It's much more about the superstructure of politics. And what we're observing right now with the Democratic Party is a fight for resources. We're seeing a lot of insurgent candidates that are coming out. They're primarying, rank and file Democrats. And we're seeing the system sort of try and ward off an insurgency, which is what always happens with political parties. It happened, by the way, with Barack Obama back in 2008. It happened before with Bill Clinton. It happens. But the superstructure of a party, particularly, it involves a lot of this, which is you start finding people who are influencing the conversation and perception. It used to be with cable news, right? You used to have cable news where a lot of people would go on. They would also have jobs with the Democratic Party. They would be consultants, all of those things. Now we have a situation where independent media and influencers and commentators are now part of that superstructure. So here's where I am with this. We don't know who within the progressive liberal spheres, all of these things, whether it's Substack or Blue Sky or YouTube or Reddit or wherever in the hell, right? We don't know how many people are on the bankroll of different organizations. We don't know how many of them have fake subscribers. We don't know how many of them have bot platforms that they're misusing. We don't know how many of them, for instance, just to throw an example out, getting $1,500 per post supporting a candidate like Haley Stevens. So we've now entered into this new era of sort of intra-party sort of schism and civil war. And I think all along we should have known who was taking money under the table, who it was that was getting boosted in these ways, and who isn't, right? Who is actually showing up and having these conversations? Because it's not just about influence in terms of like subscribers and bases. It's in terms of who is making the reality and the discourse
Yeah.
of what's going on right now, more pertinent.
I'm desperate to make people watching, listening care about this issue.
Yeah.
Real quickly in the chat, somebody asked, have we ever been on air together? This is probably our 100th time. We go
Something
way
around.
back. And somebody said they love both our beards, and then most people said you were better looking. But
Mm.
I expected all of that. What you're saying is so important. But just let me break it down real quickly in that there are political organizations. Let's just talk about Democrats. We talk about everybody, but the DNC, the DCCC, individual Senate campaigns or House campaigns that give money to people who have large accounts. Used to be on Twitter, where a lot of people were making money, but now it could be Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, Substack, to say and post things. And not only political organizations like the DNC, it could be industry trade groups, including ones that we support, like clean energy or public education. Or it could be foreign interests like AIPAC, Israel, or Russia, or the Saudis, which have all paid people to say things, to write about things, to cover things. You're not allowed to do that as a journalist. Journalists are not allowed to do that. Influencers have become journalists in a way, but the problem, there's a myriad problems about this. So it's happening. You and I both know many of the accounts. You and I agree that we would be transparent if somebody was paying us. And we think that that's a very important thing. It's not going to be regulated. I wish we could chain people and collude together to have a similar standard, but there's always going to be people who are going to take money from foreign interests, special interests, and political campaigns. Why is it so bad that they do it and that they don't tell you?
Well, a couple of points, because you laid out a lot of stuff there that we need to establish. First things first, the Republican Party and the right, they've done this for forever, right? We had these reports and these sort of reveals that people like Ben Shapiro, right-wing influencers, were taking tons of money from Russia, from Hungary, from a bunch of billionaires. Their influence and their reach and their clout, it was all artificially boosted. And I don't know if you know about this, Pete, and I don't know if the people watching and listening knew about this. It wasn't just their shows, it was also their products. It was also books. It was also, their films, all of this stuff. It was being inflated in order to make them seem like they had more support than they had, which, whether consciously or unconsciously, it shapes the way people consider politics and political realities. So the Republicans have done this for a very long time. The Democratic Party and all of their shareholders, all of their stakeholders, they've certainly done this for a while. We have seen these sort of campaigns where money and influence have sort of converged. But right now, it's even worse, because the stakeholders of the Democratic Party and the rank and file of the Democratic Party, they understand that there is an actual challenge to their power. And this isn't just about elections, Pete. This is about literally billions upon billions of dollars, and potentially down the road trillions of dollars, because we're now talking about what direction this country goes in, what type of policies, what type of legislation is going to get passed, whether or not we support apartheid states, whether or not we support wars, whether we do all of this. And you brought up something, you said, I don't know that we can legislate this, but it doesn't necessarily have to be legislated. It can be regulated among the platforms, because even something like YouTube, if something is paid or sponsored content, there has to be a disclaimer at some point or another. Right now, whether it's Substack or Blue Sky or wherever, there is no regulation in terms of a person having to reveal that they are engaging in sponsored content. So that is the first place. And I would make the argument that this is an essential conversation for people to have. I would say anybody watching this or listening to this, start making it a regular occurrence to ask people, are you being paid by anybody, funded by anybody? Are you engaging with fake accounts, fake subscriber bases, all of those things? Because people have a right to know. And eventually down the line, yes, there could be some legislation, there could be some regulation at a national level. I would hope so. But as of right now, we need to start asking these questions, because we don't know who we're talking to. We don't know why people are saying and doing the thing.
And the reverse too, like if an organization is paying the DNC or a candidate or another organization, I want to know who they're paying, and I want to know why what they're saying. It matters for a couple of other reasons. I mean, you touched on it, but somebody in the chat said too that there's a lot of accounts with huge followings and little engagement. What does that mean?
Well, just a quick little idea for people. If you see that there is a person, and by the way, a large part of this is all of us having to change the way that we interact with media. Because a lot of people, and Pete, you and I, we've talked about this in the past, but I'll go ahead and lay it out, which is a lot of people are promoting or providing content that is something that people want to hear. It doesn't challenge them. It doesn't bring up things that they need to trouble themselves with and be uncomfortable with. So they're naturally going to flock to this stuff. There's a lot of catharsis among liberal and progressive influencers and commentators. But it starts with a little bit of media literacy, which is if somebody says that they have a million subscribers, and you look at their videos, you look at their articles, you look at their content, and there's only like 150, 200 views, if there's only like 30 likes, you have to ask a question, which is, are these people making incredibly bad content that no one's engaging with? Which then asks the question, why are so many people subscribed? Or is it that there is an artificially ballooned subscriber base that is trying to present someone as more popular and more influential than they actually are?
Which is also, you mentioned the books like Donald J. Trump or Trump Jr. or whoever, they write a book and then the publisher or themselves, they buy all of the books to make it look like to inflate the sales. I think it's really, by the way, you clearly have a real following. Like the people who followed you on Twitter and on Substack clearly are real people because your engagement is so high. I mean, like, this is the thing I hate about Jared. Jared could just go on and post on Threads or something like, oh, I just farted and made scrambled eggs. And people be like, swoon, fuck you. Ugh. They didn't even say anything important. I'm just like, oh, Jared, can I shine your shoes? Meanwhile,
to be fair, Pete, my scrambled eggs are very good.
Very fluffy.
They're creamy. They're creamy.
I post something funny and consequential. One like, it was me. It matters also because you're shaping public opinion. When you have a huge account, it makes you think that, wow, a lot of people like, admire, respect, follow, maybe even pay this person. To me, we are now in this society, this culture, this atmosphere, this media atmosphere where trust and reputation should be the most valuable thing. Your reputation should be the currency. And I think that you should have a few independent or more creators, influencers, whatever, that you trust, that you admire, who present a certain kind of moral clarity that helps you. I mean, so often I look to people like you and so many others, and I go, you know what? Jared thinks this about that. And I know Jared's a really thoughtful guy. I know Jared believes in and trusts science. I know Jared doesn't take money from. So we should have a handful of people that we're paying independently, but we should also understand that their opinion and things that they're saying aren't being influenced by someone paying them, but what they truly believe in, good faith arguments and a real sense of mission and principle for what they're doing. And I don't know how to convince people that matters so much, but I really want to, because sometimes you will take a shot at or insult somebody, one of these people on Threads, and so many people will come, progressives will come to their rescue and their aid. How dare you? Who the hell are you, Pete Dominick? I'm like, I don't know, but I am the guy who's been doing it since that kid was in Pampers. I got some credibility. Go ahead.
And by the way, Pete, I want to pay you a compliment. We've been doing this for a long time. I do feel like you have made me better at what I do, because we will have conversations in which you challenge what I'm saying. And I hope that I have had a similar influence on you.
No.
Yeah, right. And I do think that what happens in that is that we start to see, much like in media conglomeration and monopolization, the same way all of this works. We're now in this new era with independent media. And you'll notice a lot of people are traveling in packs. And whenever they're having conversations, there's not a lot of friction. There's not a lot of pushback. And that now leads to this is uncomfortable medicine. And I'm sorry to have to do it, but it's true. The way that we experience, whether it's articles, analysis, commentary, discussion, discourse, a lot of it is designed much like cotton candy to just taste good. Right? There's no nutrients to it. There's nothing there that actually challenges us. There's nothing there that makes us reconsider our preconceived notions. And instead, what peddled more or less a drug that allows us to feel better about ourselves, feel better about the situation, and not really look at what's going on and how things are occurring. The problem in all of this is that the financial incentive is for people to go on and not challenge people's ideas. This is one of the reasons why the Democratic stakeholders and shareholders and a lot of these people flooding money into these accounts, that they give money to the people that they do. And I don't know if you remember this, Taylor Lorenz, I can't believe I just brought her up. She had an article, I want to say it was like a year ago, and it was talking about how this Democratic group had created this program that sort of partners to do this and do that. Some of them were told, like, you can't bring this up, you can't bring this up. And obviously, it's not critiquing the Democratic Party. Personally, I want the Democratic Party to get better so it will be an actual resistance against the Republican fascism. But that's not what's happening and what's being reflected. And what it does is it smooths out any of that friction that the people watching and listening might have.
Yeah, no, all of that is really pertinent and important. And I'm glad that you're saying it. I hope that people care about this conversation. I hope that people care about this topic. I hope that people take care when they click follow, when they subscribe, and especially when they give money to an influencer, creator, analyst, commentator, whatever, however people identify themselves as, because it really, you need to know if they're getting paid by, to me, the most pure thing you can do, and I'm doing it, is just keep paid directly by your subscribers. I don't have ads on my show. I have in the past. I also worked in corporate media, and I get paid a salary. And if I was getting something else, I would disclose it, although I don't think I ever did. It's really important for you to ask where you're getting your money from. And so if you're going to subscribe and you're going to send money, make sure you have a good understanding of that. Anything you want to add to what people's skepticism should be or what people's approach should be before they click on that paid subscription and sign up?
Yeah, I think it begins, and this is something that I've had to do. And I know you're a thoughtful guy. We've had conversations over the course of years, so I've got to know like how you approach these things. You have to constantly ask yourself, why are you engaging with certain things? Are you engaging with certain voices? Are you engaging with these things because you're trying to learn? You're actually being involved in politics. And I want to I want to underline something you just said, which is it is important and people do need to care because politics actually matter. Right? We're in a moment where it's like this can't be a pastime. There's a reason why people don't watch cable news anymore. It's because they treated this like TV show. There's a reason why people are looking for independent voices and independent sort of media. And the reason is because people recognize this is life or death. We're facing actual fascism. We're facing an actual existential crisis in this country. So each time that you're engaging in these things, it's a good idea to ask, why am I engaging in them? Why is it that I'm drawn to this thing? Am I doing it because it's improving me? Doing it because it's actually making a difference? Or am I doing it because it makes me feel better? Does it offer me some sort of almost a warm bath? And Pete, one last thing on this. I'm sure you've come across this on social media, including self help, all of these kinds of things. There's one account after another makes a ton of money because they're telling people what it is that they want to hear. And that's how you get to Maha. That's how you actually get to MAGA. The entire is about creating a frictionless existence and people for that. So people need to engage with themselves about why it is that they're drawn to certain voices and certain mediums.
That's really well said. A frictionless existence. You cut out on my end for a second there, but I think I got all the gist of it. And I think that's, yeah, another great note of advice. If when you're listening to somebody, they're telling you everything you want to hear, then question that, all of it, including this conversation right now. All right, let me get into a couple of the issues of the day or developments happening in the world. First of all, Lindsey Graham's funeral was held today. You and Waj had a great conversation. Everybody should go back and watch. It was really, really good. I was watching and trying to get nose in on it when you guys were watching, when you guys were talking about Lindsey Graham. And what you said about him, I remember, was that Lindsey Graham was a weather vane for many of the worst ideas that, I don't know how you said it, Americans, Republicans have ever had. And you listed those ideas, but that was such a good way of putting it. That guy was always wrong, technically, morally, politically. And so what else do you want to say about the reactions or about Lindsey Graham here today?
First of all, he can rest in hell. And I think it was also obvious it abundantly clear, all of these Democrats who talked about all of their good times with him. You know, yeah, he may have started one war after another that killed literally millions of people, but like he was so nice to travel with, Pete. He was so nice to have dinner with, and he was secretly funny and very, very kind.
Yeah.
And I think what it revealed is the larger problem in all of this, which goes back to something that you touched on, which is these are ethical world tests. And every single time Lindsey Graham failed. And for people to rhapsodize about him or talk about losing their friend, it reveals something else in all of this. And this, I'm going to link it back to our previous conversation. If you find on the ethical test of the moment that people keep failing them, if they can't call a genocide, if they can't stand up for gay and trans people, if they can't stand up for the poor, if they can't stand up for women's rights, if they can't question their own party, if they can't do this, they can't do that, why would you trust them? You end up having to ask, what is it that you are actually putting yourself on the line for here? And Lindsey Graham was a politician who did way more damage to the world than good that he happened to achieve. And so when you look at this is a life that was wasted, that made the rest of the world worse. And we're lucky that he's no longer alive. He's no longer in power. And meanwhile, everything that he created will continue to go forward until we expect people to not rhapsodize nostalgically about their friendships with someone like Lindsey Graham.
Love it. Love that commentary and the way that you speak and the face that the noises come out of. Jared. Very attracted to Jared. I love Jared and I, by the way, have had a lot of conversations about men and masculinity and gender and all of it. And I'm always happy to engage with anybody on that. And it's one of the other things I just really like and admire about you. And I guess that we're very like-minded. Your first book, you wrote all about it, your childhood and your life and everything that how you arrived there. And I could talk about how I arrived there, but we have arrived at a very similar spot when it comes to our role as men in America, or role as straight white men in America, or some of the other categories that we certainly identify as. And so we can always talk about that. But I want to ask you about you just wrote about this over at Substack, what's going on in the Democratic Party. I believe you called it the Democratic Civil War. Seems a little hyperbolic. Seems like now who's looking for clicks?
Wow.
Civil War.
Would you prefer schism? I know schism sounds good. It's a good sounding word.
I don't think that's harsh enough. I think you're stuck. I think you got to get somewhere between, but make the case, tell us how the sides are, and what you think of what's happening. I think it's a really fascinating, really interesting thing. The only thing I hate about it is when people try to compare it to what happened the Republican Party and the Tea Party and or anything. Anytime anybody tries to compare Democrats or progressives or liberals to conservative Republicans, I'm not even interested. I'm not interested. We'll just have two separate conversations. It's completely different groups of human beings. But how do you characterize it in this piece, or how do you talk about the Civil War and the Democratic?
Yeah, so I'll try and boil this down as much as possible because that is a long ass article. And I think this is something most people need to understand in all of this. I had a conversation a few years ago. One of those liberal commentators came on the podcast, and they were mad at me, and they were like talking about the Democratic Party, and they said, "Who do you think the Democratic Party is?" And I said, "Well, it's a confluence of interests that they represent." And the person's like, "No, you're wrong. It's the people who vote for it." And I was like, "That's not how political parties work." And the Democratic Party is beholden to a group of stakeholders, large, incredibly wealthy corporations and individuals that they have to serve in order to gain money from and support of those people. Those people, as conditions continue to deteriorate in this country, are growing more authoritarian in nature. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party has become conservative. They have a base of people who are people of color, working class people, LGBTQ people, women, college educated people, professional managerial class, you name it. Those people do not have the same interest as the stakeholders. And the people who run the Democratic Party have run the Democratic Party for so long. In fact, the machine that runs the Democratic Party is still the Obama machine. And Barack Obama has not been president of the United States of America for 10 years at this point. So their relationship with those stakeholders, particularly with the tech class at this point, and we know what they've done, it has created a disconnect between the Democratic Party and its base. That always, when that happens, it always leads to tension between the base and the party. And if the party doesn't correct, or if a new machine doesn't take over the party, oftentimes bringing in new stakeholders, you will often see people leave the party and or the party become completely different. We're now in a place, it's a liminal space for the Democratic Party, and there's a literal battle being fought over who will decide where it goes and if it continues.
The Democratic primary voters have a tremendous amount to say about who gets elected. You're not saying that they don't. You're not saying that we don't elect our Democratic leaders, are you?
No, and to go ahead and bring our conversation full circle, Pete, I don't know this or if people watching it know it, but right now the Democratic Party is broke. Matter of fact, they're worse than broke. I believe they're about $20 million in debt, right? You literally have Ken Martin, who is asking vendors to send him bills after the midterms. He's going to be fired very, very shortly. Why does the Democratic Party not have money? The Democratic Party doesn't have money because they're still getting the big donations. They're not getting the small donations. When you and I, Warren, democracy's under attack. Can you spare $5? Hey, it's Chuck Schumer. I just talked to Donald Trump and I told him you're not going to do this anymore. The small donors are no longer giving money to the Democratic Party. So those shortfalls have to be taken care of elsewhere. So the people who would give the money to the Democratic Party, those stakeholders, who are they giving it to, Pete? They're giving it to people to tweet $1,500 tweets supporting someone like Haley Stevens. So what is essentially happening in the primary right now is you're having sort of an attempt to sort of change the conversation, to put forward candidates try and steal off these insurgents. So yes, the Democratic electorate in these primaries is going to go more towards leftist and progressive candidates, but the Democratic Party is starting to try really aggressively to massage their way into these people winning elections that they might not win otherwise.
What do we need to do?
That's the different question, right? Because it starts with a decision, which is, what do you want the Democratic Party to do? Do you think the Democratic Party, if it continues along with the status quo, is going to fix things? Or is it going to be much like what we've seen over the past 10 years? We're going to hear a lot of statements of concern. I mean, maybe we'll have Nancy Pelosi tear up a State of the Union and that will be enough and it will fix things. Meanwhile, they're supporting AI. They're supporting data centers. They're saying we don't need to abolish ICE. We need to reform and rein in ICE. I think we personally need to hold the Democratic Party to account. We need to criticize them. We need to campaign against their candidates who aren't willing to take these stances and who fail the ethical and moral test. But meanwhile, we have to see how this works, how parties actually function, and also these sort of tricks that they pull to try and protect their power, which is understandable and expectable. It's how this stuff works.
Mom Donnie yesterday announced the first of 3 government-run grocery stores.
Yep.
And I feel like it's the most obvious example of a policy put in action that we will be able to give an honest measure to. Oftentimes things fail for the wrong reasons and they're set up to fail or something. So who knows, but I'm fascinated by what's going on in New York and what it means for the rest of the movement and the country. Because if you're a conservative Republican, but your Rayo's sauce is cheaper at this store than the one you're used to, you're going. If the groceries are cheaper at the government-run store, and they're going to be, you're going. If it's run well, you're going. If there's people behind the cash registers, maybe as opposed to robots, I fucking almost never check out on the self-checkout unless there's like 5 items. I cannot. I hate that shit. It's so annoying to me. But the point being, these policies being rolled out, Mom Donnie in New York and others that are at least in theory being promoted, from Medicare for all to any number of other things. What are your thoughts on what's happening in New York and what's happening with the kind of Democratic Socialist candidates and movement?
Oh, Pete, I'm going to use some very, very professional political science jargon. You ready? This is a complicated idea.
Professional.
People like it when politicians make your life better. I know that's shocking. They prefer that over pep rallies, over hanging out with Beyonce, over spending God knows how much money for an interview with Oprah Winfrey. Why? Because it feels a lot like your middle manager saying, I've heard your complaints. We're having a pizza party today. I hope this helps. That is essentially what the Democratic Party has offered and what the neoliberal class has offered. My North Star, Pete, my North Star for everything is FDR's second Bill of Rights that would have went through had he not died or if he would have been seceded, which is people deserve a right to housing, education, food, healthcare, right? Pretty simple. And and employment too, which I think that's part of it. But these are things that we say that we care about or that we desire, but when it actually gets put into practice, a lot of people are like, oh, this is actually helping me and this actually makes me feel like politics can do something. And then meanwhile, entrenched politicians are like, whoa, 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 how could we possibly do any of this? When in fact the road is clear. All we have to do is tax the wealthy or actually make them pay their taxes. We have to regulate these corporations and monopolies. And by the way, maybe if we don't have bullshit wars that we're not even winning. But we've gotten to the point of precarity in which the ear has fallen by the side. What are we giving them our money for? Why is our money being spent in this direction? Why can I not afford a house? Why can I not even afford to rent a place? Why can I not afford groceries? Can't afford gas. Eventually, at some point, people start looking around and they say, either I'm going to give up on politics altogether, it's done, or I'm going to demand that somebody does something about it. And that's what Monty does, which is one of the reasons why he's so controversial. He's actually doing something about the problems.
I want to change the way you said one thing there at the end, and which I agree with what you said was people either are going to say, I give up with politics altogether. What I want to change politics to is government, because what this really is
Yep.
always has been a thoughtful at times and violent at other times conversation or argument about the role of government. What role should government play in your life? And you mentioned FDR, and then we know what Reagan said and did. Government is the problem. And there's an ideology that government is the problem, so and so. But we've been stuck in this situation for so long where government has screwed up so much and there hasn't been accountability that generations of people now have plenty of reasons to be cynical about it. But Mamdani and some of these other DSA members, as well as some other mainstream politicians, what they need to do, what they want to do, and what they're trying to do is show you what government is. It's us, and we should be influencing the decisions they make, and they should represent our interest. And most importantly, government's role, in my opinion, easiest said, should do what is in the public's interest. Should do what's in the public's interest and not be concerned with profit making. And, there's all kinds of theories about it, but that's really what it boils down to. Not politics necessarily. Of course, it's politics. Everything is politics, but the role of government in your life. And if there are politicians who can effectively, show results from crime going down to prices going down to healthcare being accessible, then people will actually start to believe that government can do what's in the public's interest, is the way I like to talk about it. Somebody in the chat said, Jared is biased, so his opinion is not gospel. And I could not agree more with that person. Jared is biased. His opinion is not gospel. But you know what is bone structure.
Oh my God.
What?
But my composed, intelligent response to what you just said is exactly correct. And that is the issue here, which is for the past half century, we have been told that we're all individuals, that there is no such thing as society, which, by the way, is what Margaret Thatcher said on the other side of the pond as neoliberalism was taking off, which is also what happened with Reaganism. We've now reached the point where, Pete, we've all been on our own. We've all been out for ourselves, and we've now reached the end of that project. What did it get us? Even the people who have money, even the people who have succeeded, they're miserable. Like I always say, we're very lucky to have Donald Trump and Elon Musk to be the faces of wealth in this country because they're miserable. They're unhappy people. And we've now gotten to this point where a weird thing has happened where people have stopped expecting government to do things for them or to make their lives better. And all they want at this point is they want government to hurt their enemies. That's a strange inversion of this thing. Like, I don't even care if Donald Trump hurts me economically as long as he hurts the people.
That's a whole. I feel like that mentality was most played out like through COVID, like wishing that people. I don't care as long as people get sick and die. Like that's absolutely right. It's absolutely true. It's the grossest kind of incentive that it's really hard to imagine. I hate people. I try not to, but I do. But I don't wish them necessarily pain, and I don't want to cheat to beat them in the arena of ideas. And my incentives and moral clarity is the most important thing to me. My consistency, I mean, the worst thing I call people these days, because I don't like to dehumanize people and say, oh, they're demonic and all that nonsense. I say that's an empty barrel. That's a person who has no principles. They don't stand on any ground at all. Lindsey Graham and J.D. Vance and many others, Tucker Carlson, people in media as well. You always got to include them. So, yeah. All right. What else?
Can I make one point off that? Because I'm glad you brought this up. The way that I operate at this point, you take someone, I hate Donald Trump. I think he's one of the worst humans that the United States has ever produced. But I don't think that you should punish people who are like Donald Trump, because I would like to prevent more Donald Trumps from being created.
Yeah, and punitive measures will probably likely only make it worse.
Right. You can go ahead and hold a criminal like him accountable, which he should be. He should spend the last of his days in The Hague. By the way, put in George W. Bush while we're at it, but that's a different conversation. But when you're having this conversation, we need to have a discussion about how you lift all boats and you can recreate the antidote to fascism, which is a manic mental breakdown in which everyone is all out for themselves and willing to hurt anybody without thinking about it. The antidote to it is rediscovering community and the interconnectedness of living.
Yes.
And if we discover that, we can find a better direction, which is the reason why something like what Mamdani does and why a lot of these candidates, what they're offering, it rings with people, because we understand that we've spent too much time alone. We have to reconnect society and we have to rebuild what's been.
That's really well said, and leads me to my plug, which is a lot of the people that are here are already fans, subscribers of yours. Somebody asked, where are you posting mostly? Obviously Substack, but Blue Sky, Jared is really big on, but Threads too, right?
No, I'm not on Threads.
Oh, Blue Sky then. Follow him there. But just in terms of creating community, I accidentally did that. I hosted a daily show on live radio for years, and then I started doing my podcast after I left SiriusXM. I accidentally created a community as a result of us being scared during COVID, of us wanting to continue with the show that we'd created and people had supported. And now we have this amazing community, and it's not the only community I'm a part of. It's not hard to. Communities are very accessible now through Zoom and online communities. So please sign up for mine and join us at our Thursday night hangouts and our live events, the first of which Jared was a headliner of out in Vegas. We've done it now 3 times, and we have an amazing community of diverse people, ethnically and age-wise, as well as ideology. But we all mostly live on Earth One, and we remind each other of what's important all the time and take a lot of gratitude from it. So please come join my community and listen to the show. And if you're not part of Jared's, go support him on Patreon and listen to the Muckrake podcast. And what else?
Yeah, over at Dispatches from a Collapsing State. Really good to hang out with you, man.
I love you. I miss you always, and I'm really glad to catch up with you. Thanks for everybody for watching live, and we'll be doing this again soon. Thank you, Jared, and see you guys, everybody. Bye-bye. Join us tomorrow night, Thursday night. If you're watching live at 8 o'clock, I host a hangout, so come by and we'll be your friend. Bye. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.